right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fearcast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD and anxiety spectrum disorders and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss, and I'm a licensed therapist specializing in OCD and anxiety, both of those things. And thank you all so much for joining me today. So today, I finally get back to being able to record a podcast. These past couple weeks have been awful for me. Just illness and getting sick all over the place and then having a weird throat and then all my time being sucked away from me and not being able to sit in front of a microphone to do a recording and the kids being sick. It's a whole thing being over here at the Foss house. So I apologize for not getting a podcast out there. Believe me, I want to. I like doing this. I love doing this. And I love all the questions. And alas, just stuff gets in the way. So I could, you know what I could do? I could sit here and beat myself up. I could be like, you know what? I should just have a bunch of recordings that are in the can and just ready to go. I should record twice a week or do a bunch just in case a situation like this happens. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be gentle with myself and be like, you know what? Things get in the way. Life gets in the way. And sometimes I can't record. And don't worry, it bums me out because I want to be consistent and get this out because I know some people really enjoy this and learn something from this. And that is what keeps me going in this. So anyways, forgive me or hate me. Sit out there and just go, that Kevin, he's the worst. And at times, my self-deprecating mind would agree with you. There are parts of me that aren't great. I get it. There's a lot to hate. However, for those of you, including myself, who can find forgiveness in your heart for my illness and nonsense, thanks. It's great. Anyhow, so today I'm getting to a question, an audio question. I know the audio questions are the best. If you would like a question answered and you would like to go to the tippity top of the list, send me an audio question. I have some instructions on the Instagram. By the way, I'm over it as the Instagrams. I'm at Fearcast Podcast over there. I know it's super hard to remember. Fearcast Podcast, Instagram. Go get it. Anyways, so somebody sent me in a question. The person who sent me this question is going by the name Overthinking Queen. I think that's a great name. Now, something to know about this question. I have edited this one down. Now, she is going to say that it is a long question because it is. It is a 5-minute question. But don't worry, I edited it down from about 15 minutes. So there was a lot of stuff that I'm unfortunately going to have to cut out. Some of it was a little redundant. Some of it was just kind of saying, some of it was maybe superfluous to the overall question. So I'm hoping I'm getting enough information in here. So Overthinking Queen, I hope I'm doing right by you and answering your question as best I possibly can. I'm going to add a little bit of summary in there at times just to fill in the story a little bit. So we're going to get into this question. This is a great question. There's a lot of facets to it. Ultimately, I think it comes down to a question of sexual orientation, OCD, and faith, and just kind of and also maybe an obsessing about obsessing element. Ooh, I know we haven't really talked about that much, but there's that sort of stuff going on in here too. So without further ado, why don't I play Overthinking Queen's question and I will get to it. So here we go.
Okay, so I have recently, for the past year or so, if not a little bit longer, but it's definitely been roughly a year, I've been having really strong ruminating thoughts about sexual orientation. It seems like it's sexual orientation OCD. And in the past month or so, a little bit over a month, I've been having anxiety and ruminating thoughts about health issues. And in the past, I've had a lot of anxiety and ruminating thoughts about sex and doing certain things during sex or not doing them, and then fearing that my future husband or partner would not want me anymore or something. My main question is does OCD or anxiety manifest itself because there are other areas in your life that have been ignored or need to be addressed? Am I avoiding issues and OCD or these ruminating thoughts are just occupying that space. My sexual orientation, like ruminating thoughts, have also been occurring in the midst of this like relationship or situationship. I've had certain fears before about it, but it really got triggered multiple times, like throughout seeing him. It was triggered a lot when I made strong eye contact with various women. Like, one is a close friend of mine who is objectively an incredibly beautiful person. Like, her career kind of depends on her being beautiful. So, you know, there's that. And she has a very intense gaze. And every time this happens, it feels like a dark cloud comes over my head and in my chest, asking me if I'm actually not attracted to men, but I'm attracted to women, and how come I've never been in a relationship? How many guys have I liked in my past? Did I really actually like them? Was I actually attracted to them? This is a situation that seems like a romantic situation I've been in with guys in the past. Like, why am I in this situation with a girl right now? Does this mean that I actually like her? Am I suppressing this? Did I really like my ex, or did I just like the fact that he liked me and gave me attention and I was just using him? Am I avoiding who I am because I'm religious, or will I be outcasted from my family and my religion? Like, all of these questions. I truly deep down believe that I'm not interested in women. I've had multiple experiences with men in the past where I was extremely into them and I wanted to have sex with them, but then obviously I didn't because for religious reasons, but for some reason my mind won't trust those experiences and will invalidate them somehow and be like, well, you didn't actually enjoy it. Like, I don't know. And I truly believe that I don't want to be with women. Like, I don't want to get married to a woman. I wanted to be married and get married to a man since I was a child, but my memory is like playing tricks on me. Like, I'll get questions about like, oh, who was my childhood crush? And then my mind will go blank, and then my mind will go like, see, you didn't even like anyone when you were younger. Or I had like a best friend for a really long time who was a girl, and then my memory would be like, were you actually like in love with her as a child? And then after coming across your podcast, I've felt relieved and realized this must be like sexual orientation OCD. And after analyzing like my life basically and trying to like look at what this could be caused by, I was having thoughts that maybe this is coming from like a fear of not knowing who I am, a fear of loss of control in my life, fear of not being worthy, fear of like perfectionism or being seen, fear that there's something like wrong with me. So I'm trying to figure out like how to address those fears, or to figure out which one it actually is. So yeah, I'm sorry that this was very long, but the main point is, does OCD or anxiety manifest itself because there are other areas in your life that you're ignoring and need to be addressed? And can I address those issues to help my ruminating thoughts? Also, I realized that, maybe this is just manifesting itself because I don't want to wait until I'm married anymore. But then I get really upset about that, because then it's like forgoing like my religion, and then feeling like, am I abandoning my religion? But I don't want to abandon my religion, so it's confusing in that way as well.
All Right. So, Overthinking Queen, great question. So, some of the things that I had to cut out. So she is 25 years old. She acknowledges in her other parts of her question that she is a virgin. She is religious, comes from a religious background. I think you guys heard that part. And she's kind of struggling to have finding someone who's interested in her at the same time that she's interested in them, and all this stuff. She says that historically speaking, she's avoided therapy, and I get this, and I hear the story a lot. Now, I want to address this first, is that some people avoid therapy. I will say this. Some religious people avoid therapy. Now, a lot of people avoid therapy for a lot of different reasons, but this is her reason, and this is some reasons that other people have as well. So she mentions that she's a religious person. She's avoided therapy because she's got these sexual orientation OCD obsessions, and she's worried that what if she goes to a therapist and a therapist is going to do one of two things, or perhaps even both. One, to tell her that she needs to stop pursuing her faith. And the second is that they're going to encourage her toward the sexual orientation obsession. In other words, kind of this idea of like, oh, you quote, have gay thoughts, so therefore you might be gay. Go pursue the gay thoughts, right? Now, I think this is. I understand this. I understand the fear and the concern that some people may have about starting therapy, what the therapist is going to say and encourage them to do. Now, some therapists are ridiculous. I will say this to anybody out there. If you are a person who feels uncomfortable with your therapist, don't see that therapist. Period. There are a lot of therapists out there. And if you don't get along with them, if they are urging you to do something that you are really against, that doesn't mean, hey, I have contamination obsessions and they want me to not wash my hands so much. That's not what we're talking about here. I'm talking about they're instructing you, guiding you, telling you to do things that are outright against your values and against what you are saying you do not want to be doing. If they continue to push, find someone else. I will, if you have problems, if there are therapists out there who have problems with that, come fight me on it. We're going to talk. All right. For this person, find someone who is, all right, a reasonable therapist ought to be someone who's willing to take your faith into account and is willing to help you work towards a better life with your faith, a more functional life with your faith, a more workable thought life with your faith. All right? Now, not everyone in every faith is scrupulous or has, quote, problems or has mental health issues. Some people do, but some people who aren't religious, some atheists out there, sometimes also have mental health issues. So it's all these things that can happen. Now, here's what I want you to then consider is that find a therapist that's going to be understanding and going to be encouraging of your faith and trying to work within your faith system. Secondly, if someone says just simply because, well, you have, quote, gay thoughts, go pursue them. I think that's also a little ridiculous without further processing. That's like saying, oh, you have violent thoughts. Well, go out there and hurt people. Now, of course, those thoughts aren't the same and the concept, but you hear what I'm saying, right? A therapist ought to be there to process the meaning and the significance of the thoughts to you, what they mean for you, what you want them to mean for you, what you fear they mean about you and for you, and then to help you to work towards a more reasonable solution and help you grasp them better. Now, all right, so Overthinking Queen, I'm so sorry that you have fallen victim to that fear, and I would encourage you to reach out again and to find a therapist with whom you can feel comfortable. She acknowledges that she also wants to perhaps pursue therapy land. Go do it. I think so. I think no, I might be getting that wrong. Somebody else. Moving on. All right. So let's go to her question. So her primary question, I think she says, is her obsession occurring because she has other things in her life that she needs to deal with? All right. She also, asked further questions like, is she avoiding who she is because she's religious, or fears she's going to be rejected by her family, and all that stuff. I think that's kind of some secondary obsession stuff. I have all these notes. We're going to see if I can mess all of them up. The self-criticism bit. All right. So let's go with that first question, right? So is her obsession occurring because she has something else in her life that she deals with? Now, what comes up for me in that is this kind of like psychodynamic belief about mental health, right? It kind of sounds like, all right, am I dealing with this obsession because I have this whole other, conundrum in my body, mind, and spirit that needs to be dealt with? Now, I don't know if I'm reading too far into this, and if she's asking, is there something deep in my subconscious that I really need to work out, and that's why I'm having this obsession? It could certainly be. It could be kind of a little bit more surfacey in the sense of being, an OCD obsession about her sexual orientation, and saying, hey, do I have this obsession because deep down I have repressed homosexuality, and I need to be dealing with my sexuality, and that is why I have this obsession. Now, I'll say to this. Well, first off, I have no idea. I'm not psychic, and you're not in my office to help deal with these things. Now, oftentimes, obsessions, the OCD doesn't appear because you have this whole second, third, fourth degree thing that you have to deal with. Obsessions often show up because, one, you have the gene for OCD. Two, you somehow got there, or somehow it developed into OCD, and that there's a nature and nurture component to this. And also, oftentimes, most of the time, an obsession is going to grab onto somebody because it is something of value to them. They value this idea or this concept a lot in their life, so OCD grabs onto that as this perhaps self-protective, perhaps kind of tortuous way of grabbing onto something and making this the most important thing in her life. Now, what I think is actually important, Overthinking Queen, if you're listening to this, is that, you kind of talked about wonder what is the reason that I'm having this, right? Let's see here. Is it a fear that you just don't know who you are? Is it a fear that you have a loss of control in your life, that you're not worthy? There's perfectionism or not being seen, right? Now, oftentimes for folks with sexual orientation OCD, there can be a fear of, what if I just don't really know who it is that I am? What if I can't trust what I know about myself? Or what if I can't trust my feelings and my gut on things, or my attractions on things? And it turns out to then be this kind of cycle of not trusting yourself, not having a sense that you can rely on your feelings or your thoughts or your desires or your hopes, etc. And this is where kind of that ruminating and self-questioning comes in, and that rumination of, all right, I have this feeling. Did I have this feeling elsewhere? Have I always had this feeling? All right, this time when I have felt that I was attracted to this person, that I felt genuinely attracted to them, is that how I feel now? Now, that point where I felt genuinely attracted to them, was I genuinely attracted to them at that time, right? There's a lot of these ruminations and compulsions that people will do in order to try to fully understand who is that they are. Now, so Overthinking Queen, this may be one of the things that is central to your to your case, in this sense, that maybe it is that you have this question, this doubt about who it is that you are. My ICBT friends out there are perking up their ears, and I think that's an element here, perhaps, of just kind of getting into this process of doubting yourself, and not then trusting your senses, or not trusting yourself, in a sense, right? So, part of exposure and response prevention then is going to be acting as if you can trust yourself, and accepting the possibility that, maybe you're wrong. The possibility that maybe you don't know who you are, and that you're going to discover later on in life that you were wrong, as you attempt to pursue the person that you hope you are or desire to be. because you said a bunch of times, and I cut this out a couple of times. You shared, you're like, I am attracted to men. I've always wanted to be attracted to men. There have been times that I am attracted to men, but my anxiety stops me from believing that, or says I can't trust myself, right? So oftentimes in situations like that, someone may go back to those memories, to those feelings, or the memories of those feelings, and try to compare and evaluate and criticize and understand and scrutinize. And it's this endless loop of things. So instead, we want to resist. Now, I may be getting ahead of myself, and I'm kind of bouncing around. I've been bouncing around a lot more lately in podcasts, so hopefully it hasn't been too confusing. But one of the things that's important to do in this case, then, Overthinking Queen, is to acknowledge that those for you are likely compulsive thoughts, to try to get back to a sense of certainty and confidence and safety in who you are and what you're about and what your future holds. And instead of doing that process, I'd encourage you to point out that that's probably a compulsion, and that you have gone through that cycle before. I've said it before, is that I would encourage you to trust your compulsive conclusion. Now, what this means is you have done this loop a lot. You have ruminated and checked and thought and asked for reassurance, perhaps, and done comparing, all this stuff. And I'm willing to bet you often come to the same conclusion. Actually, I'm willing to bet you have, because you haven't come to the conclusion, you haven't said, you know what, based on all of this, I am indeed gay, and I'm going to go explore that part of my life. You haven't. What you did is you went around and around and around and around, and then you went, oh no, let me do it again, and around and around and around. And maybe you got to moments of confidence in your sexuality and who you are, and then that thought comes back. Yeah, but are you really sure? Yeah, but what about that guy over there? What about that girl who looked at you? I mean, she's attractive, so you looked at her and her gaze was pulling you in. What does that mean? And then you go back to the drawing board and you go over it again, right? The sense of doubt. So it's important, and I talked about this. I talked about this most recently in a talk I gave with OCD SoCal. Is that when we have these taboo obsessions, and sexual orientation OCD can certainly be a taboo obsession, is the reality is that we as people notice other people who are attractive. We do. And it could be somebody of the opposite sex. It could be someone of the same sex. It could be someone within your family even. We notice that there are people who are attractive. And OCD loves that. OCD grabs onto it and goes, yep, what if you aren't who you think you are? You notice that person was attractive. What if you're instead of this person that historically you have been your entire life, or you're the opposite of that, or you are someone or something else that you are not? And that question is uncomfortable, right? The ICBT folks will call that the obsessive doubt. I think it's just, we call it doubt, right? It's the doubt about, well, no, they would probably say there is, the initial question is doubt, and then you attempt to answer the question, and then you come to a conclusion, and you move forward with it. But alas, obsessive doubt comes in, and that is when you turn that question into that rumination cycle, and the answer is not sufficient, and you then are off to the races with the obsession. Anyhow, all right. Another thing that I heard in this Overthinking Queen is almost a sense of shame about the presence of these thoughts, and almost a sense of kind of a belief in this almost like internal brokenness because you have these thoughts, and a lot of self-criticism because you have these types of thoughts. Now, pardon me if I'm overreading into this. Perhaps I would do that, but I'm slowly coming to the conclusion that there's no way of getting over OCD. There's no way of getting over an obsession without addressing the element of shame about the obsession itself, about this belief that you are somehow intrinsically broken or wrong or not whole because of these thoughts. And we other ourselves with these thoughts. Instead, there needs to be an element of, and if you were in my office, we'd certainly talk about this, but an element of acknowledging that these thoughts are just that. They are thoughts. And they are a product of your human brain that has the wonderful capacity to think about all sorts of things. And it sometimes thinks about things that we don't like or love, but it doesn't care. It says, these are thoughts that I can have. So it thinks about them. Now, when we then stigmatize those and go, don't think about those are bad, our brain goes, what do you mean, this thought, this one right here, this one that you're thinking about, this one right here? And we think about it more, right? It's the don't think about the white elephant approach. So you have this thought, and it is then either a product of or exacerbated by the brain structures that also produce OCD. So what it means isn't that you are particularly broken because you have these thoughts, is that you are a human who has these thoughts. And the sooner that you can say, I have these thoughts and I'm still okay. I'm still a good person. I'm still worthy. I'm still worthy of love and relationship, and I'm still worthy of God's attention and grace and forgiveness and all of that, and have these thoughts, the sooner we can stop fighting them as if they are wrong or bad, as if that they are disqualifying thoughts or disqualifying characteristics, and they are not. You are still a worthy and quality human, and you have these thoughts because I am a worthy and quality person, and I get these thoughts and a bunch of other thoughts, and so does everybody else. And it puts you smack dab right in the middle of a great pool of people, and that is humanity. That's everybody else. We all get these thoughts. And the people who say that they aren't having those thoughts are the special group of people that we call liars. That's what we call them in the biz, liars. We all get these thoughts, and it's okay. So certainly we can talk about that. I'm actually writing an article right now. It's going to be a long article on shame and guilt and acceptance of thoughts and how we need to overcome this element of shame. Anyways, that's going to be forthcoming. All right, so all right, now I lost track. Okay. Oh, you also talked about how your memory is playing tricks on you. Now, memory is going to play tricks on us, and this is also one of the problems with engaging with these mental compulsions of kind of thinking back into your history. The more first off, the memories that you were talking about happened a long time ago. That's a lot of time for that memory to be skewed or twisted or changed or manipulated, or elements to be elements that are exaggerated or elements that are minimized, right? Gosh, I can't believe I'm going to say this. There's a great NPR podcast that came out, a while ago that talks about memory, and I would encourage you to go back and find that. And in it, they talk about the fallibility of memory and kind of it's kind of unreliable a lot of the times. And they interview Elizabeth Loftus, Dr. Elizabeth Loftus, who is the person for memory and things like that. I would encourage you to go back and listen to it. Unfortunately, I'm going to try to do the two things at once and look up the podcast at the same time that I continue to record. And you know what I'm probably going to do? I'm probably going to disappoint everybody. But that's kind of how things work. It's a Radiolab podcast. You'll be able to find it. I trust you. You can do it. All right, but the fact is that you're going back and trying to remember these past crushes, and your brain says, "See, you can't remember them. Well, therefore, you must be gay." That process is unhelpful. When your brain tries to pull you back in, instead acknowledge, first off, brain, I don't need to remember everything. Second off, brain, you know what? Maybe that's a faulty memory. Maybe it's not a faulty memory. All right, maybe it means that I'm gay. All right, then I'm going to move forward in life. Now I'm kind of getting ahead of myself with exposures. But catch yourself when you're going back and really point out that, you're having a thought, you're having an urge to go back and scrutinize your memories. And ultimately, that's going to be unhelpful. And then redirect your focus instead of the past back to a concrete thing. Redirect your focus back on what's actually happening now. Accept that there is this urge. You can acknowledge that thought process is just that. It's a thought, but it doesn't mean that it's a fact. The thought that it says that you're gay doesn't mean that it is indeed a fact. It means that it's one of those thoughts. So another element that I want to acknowledge here, or I wanted to address, is you talked about kind of this struggle between your faith and relationship, your faith and being attracted to men, and perhaps even wanting to have sex, and kind of how that's in conflict with your faith. So this is a conversation that I have with a ton of people about how there is this kind of struggle that a lot of folks of faith have, and especially a lot of young folks of faith have, when it comes to these urges, this desire to be in a relationship, to have sex, and their faith that may say to hold off on that or to save that until marriage. And it inherently puts you in this sense of conflict of, I want this thing, but I'm not going to pursue this thing. Or even more disastrously, I want this thing, but I'm supposed to not want this thing. And the reality is you want this thing and you want this thing, right? The urge is there. Don't get me started on how the church talks about sex. That's a whole separate conversation. But in this, we can acknowledge in this that you do have this urge, and you made choices based on some things. Sometimes, and I think OCD has a great time grabbing onto this and trying to point out and try to draw a conclusion that perhaps wasn't there, or perhaps wasn't the original reason that you did it, but tends to, I believe it's the term retcon, I think it is. Yeah, I think that's the term. But going back and trying to change history and say, the reason that you did this is because of this. And that's why you are not who you think that you are. Okay, so an exercise that I'll sometimes do with folks is looking back at the reasons for doing things. Now, this falls more in line with some CBT, and it's less of it is not an exposure, but it's having a different view of yourself and looking at the circumstances and trying to bring in a more rational, more grounded, and more truth-based approach or truth-based perspective on you and your life and the reason that you do things. So for example, in this, you said, historically speaking, you've been attracted to men and you wanted to pursue relationships with men, but you chose not to because of your faith. Okay. OCD then is twisting that. But in that, you can say, you know what? First off, brain, thanks for the thought. And all right, I'll concede. Maybe you're right. Maybe it was that reason deep down, and you roll your eyes when you say that. Oh, maybe it was. And maybe it was the reason that I said. Maybe it was either I didn't find someone great. I didn't find someone who I really wanted to date. There's a lot of people who we don't want to date. And maybe that's why. Maybe I didn't because I was at a different place in my faith where I was more overwhelmed by this thought of trying to pursue a relationship is bad, or having, amorous feelings is inherently bad, right? And it's helpful to sometimes look back at who it is that we are and how it is that we've changed in faith and how it is that we've changed overall. Everyone listening to this has believed certain things at certain times in their life that they do not hold those same beliefs now. And you know what I call that? Good. It's called growth and change and development and maturity. And we should. And perhaps that's what's happening here. Now, why do I go through all of that? It's not to get certainty that you are indeed straight, but it's to instead of saying, well, there's only one narrative here, we can say maybe it's one of both. Maybe it's this. I hope it's not that one. The one that you're gay, you say you're afraid of that. Well, it could be this one, but you know what? Reasonably speaking, it could also be this one. And we do that so that we can let ourselves off the hook of then trying to prove one thing or another to ourselves. And then we can lean into the uncertainty, because we're trying to live our life by what's most likely to be true about ourselves. And that's essentially what you're doing That's essentially what you would be doing with this. My advice, generally speaking, with someone who has sexual orientation OCD, you know what? 1, resist rumination, resist compulsion. That is the response prevention aspect of ERP. Resist that stuff. And then 2, pursue the life that you believe and you hope to be true. And wait. Go and pursue the relationships. If you are saying, I want to be with men, awesome. Go get them, Tiger. Go find the men. Go find all the men. Go find good dudes. They're out there. I swear there's got to be at least one. But go find someone. And when that thought comes up that says, maybe you're completely wrong in this, go, maybe I am. But I'm going to wait until I'm for certain wrong. Maybe that day will come where you are 100% certain and there isn't a doubt, isn't question, but that ain't today. You made this call to me because you are overwhelmed by doubt. You ruminated and you've gone over these thoughts because you are in doubt. That's not certainty, that's doubt. So instead, pursue the person that you hope yourself to be. And then you trust yourself to be. Remember, trust your compulsive conclusion. Act as if. And say, but maybe I'm wrong. And that's going to feel uncomfortable, but that's where you need to be. And we take that feeling and we go, yeah, man, that feels uncomfortable. And I feel the anxiety in my body, and that's okay. And you pursue the relationship. And you take care of yourself, and you catch yourself when your brain tries to pull you into rumination or tries to pull you into comparison and tries to pull you into the evaluation of your emotions and whether or not you are attracted to your friend, your apparently super hot friend. And go, you know what? Maybe I am attracted to them. Could be. But instead, I'm going to keep pursuing this relationship with this dude over here because he's more or less fine, right? So I know that's a lot of stuff. Oh, you also talked about how this is the last thing I'll talk about here. You talked about having this dream. I cut this part out and I apologize. You talked about having this dream where it involved this guy and his female friend, and she woke up with these worries that had to do with her sexuality. And despite the dream not being sexual in nature, but her anxiety was just firing on all cylinders because she had this dream and she wondered what it meant and all this stuff. I'm just going to say this is a blanket statement. Don't trust your dreams. Don't trust any dreams we have. I'm talking about dreams that we have at night. All right. It is really unlikely that we're going to have an epiphany about who it is that we are in life. Generally speaking, our dreams are what we call in the biz bonkers. They make no sense. They are a combination of a bunch of weird things. Now, all you dream catchers out there, y'all can email me. Go for it. I'm happy to delete your email. But don't trust your dreams. Acknowledge that, man, that dream was scary. Man, that dream is uncomfortable. And I have an urge to ruminate or to check or to worry or to ask. And instead, I'm going to not. And I'm going to say, maybe that dream was pointing me in the direction of me being gay. And maybe it wasn't. There's the old phrase, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Sometimes it is. And in this, if it's a dream, treat it like it's just a dream. Go, that's crazy. Well, moving on. We'll see what tonight's dream has to be. All right. Not all of us are Joseph, where we have prophetic dreams and it's going to change the course of history. Now, if you don't know that story, that's fine. I have a feeling that Overthinking Queen will get it. Anyways, that's just a random point. All right, everybody, I'm going to let this go here, but I appreciate Overthinking Queen's question. Hopefully this answer helped. Hopefully it points you in a direction of something that you can do. Again, Overthinking Queen, I would encourage you to take the risk and to go speak with a therapist, a trained, qualified, compassionate, understanding OCD trained therapist who can help you out in this process and to help you get to a place where you can accept that these are thoughts, these are scary thoughts perhaps, and that you can live your life and that you can be open to the possibility that you're wrong, but that day that you discover that you're wrong ain't today. That is somewhere ages and ages hence. And we can live with the uncertainty of it as you go and pursue the best relationship that you possibly can. And it might be the wrong one, but you're going to make it the best wrong one that you possibly can. So, all right, everybody, thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Fearcast. If you would like your question answered on a future episode, please click on the Submit a Question link at fearcastpodcast.com. If you would like your question answered sooner, please send me a recording of your question to questions@fearcastpodcast.com or by sending me an audio message through Instagram by DMing me at fearcastpodcast on Instagram. If you like the Fearcast, please write a review on your podcast platform of choice. Please remember that the Fearcast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you need a little bit of help in your recovery, please go over to fearcastpodcast.com and click on the Find Help link, and there's going to be some information for you there. So until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye.